One. Thank you so much for bearing with us as we sorted out the technology tonight, and we're really glad you made it back here with us. As somebody pointed out in the Q&A tech support tonight, we're still learning the capabilities and restrictions of Zoom, so thank you again. We really appreciate you bearing with us. I know some of you started the film a little later than others, so I wanted to let you know that the film will be available. The link that you have is active until this Friday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. So you'll be able to go back and rewatch the film, or if you missed any part or just want to watch it again, you'll be able to do so until that time. Again, the link will be open until Friday, June 19th at 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. And I'm going to introduce my panel now. And if you're just joining us, my name is Joe Alfano. I'm Food and Water Action's Director of Individual Giving. And tonight I'm joined by Emily Wurth, our Managing Director of Organizing, Megan McDonough, our Pennsylvania Organizing Manager, Alex Nagy, our California Director, and Eric Weltman, New York Senior Organizer. We were able to present tonight's program thanks to the generosity of Food and Water Action supporters like you. And we want to give a special thank you to The Story of Stuff, the producers of the film, who allowed it to screen it for you. If you would like to make a donation now, we're going to post a link in the chat below. Your support is greatly appreciated and will allow us to continue to bring you programming like this. And you will help us advance legislation to stop big oil and gas from polluting our planet. My colleagues will tell you more about that in a moment, but please donate now if you can. We are so grateful for your support. The Story of Plastic was a frightening and inspiring documentary. We're going to start our Q&A in just a moment with our panel. But first, I'd like to welcome Emily Wurth, Food and Water, who will talk to you more about how Food and Water Action is taking on big oil and gas across the country. Emily, take it away.
Yeah, thank you all so much for joining us this evening, and thank you, Joe, for that introduction. It's great to be here to discuss this documentary, The Story of Plastic. It's really an important film that shines a light on the urgent action that's needed to address the overproduction and overuse of plastic and the environmental devastation that it's caused to our rivers, oceans, and lands. So for more than 10 years, we've educated people at Food and Water Action about the myths of bottled water, run campaigns to stop the sale of bottled water. We've written research reports on plastics and provided resources and organizing support to groups working to curb the use of plastic bags and plastic bottles. But we were also the first national organization to call for a ban on fracking and help lead the efforts to ban fracking in New York, Maryland, and Washington State. And we're continuing now to push to stop fracking in states and communities across the country and around the world, because as the film explains, banning fracking is going to be really important to cutting off the supply of natural gas liquids that are also used to make plastics and contributing to this problem. Last year, we released a major report called The Fracking Endgame, and one of the major arguments was it explained that the fossil fuel industry is actually being financially propped up by selling these liquids for plastics, given how low the gas prices are right now because of an oversupply of gas. And so this plastics industry is propping up the fracking and fossil fuel industry at a time that we need to be dramatically moving off of fossil fuels and onto renewable energy to address the urban climate crisis. We simply just can't afford to extract more fossil fuels, especially to produce wasteful single-use plastic products we don't need. So our focus at Food and Water Action is in working to ban fracking and to stop the build out of billions of dollars of pipelines, petrochemical plants, and storage facilities being proposed by the plastics industry. We're currently working to fight more than 50 fossil fuel projects across the country and even some in Europe. And in the past few years, that work has really included fighting projects that will support this plastics industry. And we do this work by organizing with our allies to hold our elected officials accountable to use their authority, whether it's at the local, state, or federal level, to stop these projects. And so one place that the plastic industry hopes to dramatically expand in the coming years, as explained in the film, is in Pennsylvania, a place we've been working for a long time. And it's really no wonder. The state has permitted more than 10,000 frac gas wells, approved scores of pipelines that crisscross the state, and really ignored a lot of the problems that this industry has caused in the state. And this includes the state permitting the Mariner East 2 pipeline that was discussed in the film through sharing the really moving story of Ellen and Elise Gerhardt, who've been working to stop this. This pipeline is proposed to run clear across the state to carry the natural gas liquids from Western Pennsylvania south of Philadelphia to the Marcus Hook facility, where it's then going to be transported on huge ships by a giant international company, Ineos, to produce plastic in Scotland. I still can't believe this is possible. And we've been fighting this project from both sides of the Atlantic for the past several years. And as the film alluded to, in addition to running across the Gerhardt's property, which is really heartbreaking, the Mariner East 2 pipeline is being sited through densely populated exurbs in Chester and Delaware County in southeastern Pennsylvania, and it's really upended life for residents there. In some places, this pipeline is proposed so close to people's homes, it actually cut off their own access to their garden sheds. And Energy Transfer, the company behind the project, the same company that brought us the Dakota Access Pipeline, has received more than 80 violations. They've contaminated groundwater supplies and caused a whole myriad of problems during the construction. So we've been working hard to stop this pipeline from final construction, and we have a dedicated team member on the ground working closely with community partners, using organizing, legal analysis, and even our electoral work. Our PAC there has worked with local residents who've run for office at the state and local level and won their campaigns. And these approaches have delayed the construction. This gives us more time to organize, to raise awareness, and to get more people involved. And right now, we're working because many of the local easements granted to the company are expiring, and we're refocusing our efforts at the local level to try to stop the final construction of this pipeline. Across the Atlantic, Food and Water Action has European staff working closely with our US team to fight that Ineos, the petrochemical company that's transporting these frac gas liquids in Pennsylvania across the ocean. They're hoping to build a number of additional petrochemical facilities in Europe for the liquids from the US, and they're also trying to get fracking approved in the UK. And so our research team has written a number of reports about the company's plan, and our staff in Europe have organized a coalition of groups working to oppose Ineos's dangerous business plan in Europe. And so we know that by fighting here and in Europe, we can beat back the plans of the fossil fuel and plastics industry and work to protect our climate, our health, and our environment. So thank you all again for joining tonight. And next, I'd like to turn it over to my amazing colleague, Megan McDonough, who oversees our Pennsylvania organizing team. And we'll talk about our important work in Western Pennsylvania to fight back against these industries.
Hi, thank you all for being here tonight. My name is Megan McDonough, and I am the Pennsylvania Organizing Manager here at Food and Water Action. To understand where we are going, I think that it's important to understand where some of us have been and how we came to Food and Water Action. I started my journey similar to those in the film almost 10 years ago. I was a stay-at-home mom with my first child, Josh. I knew nothing about fracking and had never even really heard the word until a landman came knocking on my door one day. He came into my home and pulled out a map to show me how all of my neighbors had signed leases and told me that if I didn't, they were going to take the gas anyways, and I wouldn't see a penny for it. If you ask anyone that knows me, they'll tell you that I am not the type of woman that handles ultimatums very well. So I told him to leave his materials and I would look into it. And that's exactly what I did. So I learned and read as much as I could, and I didn't sign the lease. So fast forwarding a little bit, and that's truly where my story begins. My neighboring municipality began approving well sites, most notably 2 well sites where my niece's elementary school is less than a mile away in a valley downwind. The field where they played t-ball was directly across the street from the compressor station. Around the same time as activity started, my niece began having a lot of pain in her neck and stomach. My sister took her to get checked out, and our lives have never been the same since. They told us that the best guess that they had was that she had non-TB atypical mycobacterium. In short, her lymph nodes become overworked, necrotic, and they die. The first time, she would require surgery to remove a cluster of dead lymph nodes from her neck. The only explanation that they could give us for causation at the time was environmental factors. And sitting in the waiting room of that operating room while our baby was being cut open was the turning point of my entire life. I had never felt so angry or helpless in my life. Angry because I had a pretty good idea of why this was happening, and helpless because there wasn't anything that I could do about it and I couldn't prove it. So as I sat there longer looking at my sister, who was absolutely devastated, I knew that we couldn't be helpless, that we weren't the helpless kind of people. So I set out to make sure that I did everything that I could to prevent this from happening to anyone else ever again. So while continuing to deal with my niece's health, a company came to my hometown and was proposing to build a frac gas power plant right in the middle of a residential zone close to my home, our elementary schools, and countless areas, families and children. And I knew I couldn't let that happen. My own son already suffers from asthma and other health maladies that he didn't have until we moved to the Maniac region. And the negative impacts that would be felt by him were too big of a risk not to fight. So I spent every minute of my time reading township code, ordinance challenges, case law, and studied the municipality's planning code. The mama bear definitely took over in me, and I made sure that I knew every piece of municipal land use and zoning better than any municipal solicitor that I had met. I started a grassroots organization and led the fight to beat this billion-dollar corporation from building their plant in my hometown 3 times. And those now leading that group are on track for beating them a 4th. To this day, there is no power plant built in my hometown, and we were the first in the state of Pennsylvania to hold this victory. So in the summer of 2018, I saw a job posting from Food and Water Action that I truly felt was written for me. I knew from all of my research, years on the front lines, legal battles, and grassroots organizing, that the only way to fight back in Pennsylvania right now is at the local level. I knew exactly how to do it, and that's exactly what Food and Water Action was proposing. So here I am. I have dedicated my life to this fight because I know what's at stake. When we talk about work surrounding fossil fuel infrastructure and the Petro Hub build out, I think about my niece. She's 9 years old now. She has gone through numerous surgeries, and her condition should have only lasted a few weeks, and it has now gone on for more than 7 years. She is the longest running case for this medical issue that the Children's Hospital of Pittsburgh has ever seen, and somehow we're the lucky ones. That's what being a frontline community member in Pennsylvania means. And that's not something that I can accept, nor will I ever accept. There is nothing more infuriating to me than children suffering, those in power not listening, and it can't be allowed to continue. So we have to fight back, and we have to fight now. One of the ways that Food and Water Action is doing this is by recognizing that the most effective way that we can fight back against the plastic crisis is by formulating strategies all across the state of Pennsylvania to defeat these corrupt polluters and stop the supply side of this industry. In addition to our Eastern Pennsylvania work that you heard from Emily, we have expanded our team in Southwestern Pennsylvania, where we build grassroots power and pass local ordinances that protect residents from fracking, keeping the industry out of residential areas and near our schools through what we call our municipal ordinance project. Right now in southwestern Pennsylvania, we are in the crosshairs of the plastics industry, with the petrochemical hub build-out being one of the biggest threats we face. These plans would include additional ethane cracker plants like the one being constructed by Shell in Beaver County, Pennsylvania, and the one proposed in Belmont, Ohio. In addition to those, the build out would also require multiple underground ethane storage hubs and over 1,000 miles of pipelines to connect these projects, which should be noted that some of those being in counties that are already struggling with an alarming increase in childhood cancer rates since the fracking industry came to town. We know that by taking land off the table slated for development and halting fracking in southwest Pennsylvania, we are cutting off the very supply that the petrochemical hub needs in order to operate. And this couldn't be any more clear anywhere than in Allegheny County. If you look at maps of oil and gas development in southwestern Pennsylvania, you'll see that Allegheny County remains kind of this donut hole, with a vast majority of the county virtually untouched in a sea of development. Our concentration on Allegheny County is not by coincidence. The fracking industry has been working really hard attempting to implement plans for expansion into densely populated neighborhoods within the county, and we know why. So Allegheny County is actually one of the last places left on the Marcellus Shale that is rich in what is known as wet gas. Wet gas is rich in ethane and other byproducts that are used as the feedstock for the plastics industry. By organizing ahead of the fracking industry in communities throughout Allegheny County, we can deal a devastating blow to the plastic industry's plans for the Ohio River Valley. Our work in Allegheny County has proved to be some of our most successful work in the state. Since we began the municipal ordinance project, we have passed strong protective ordinances that have ensured tens of thousands of residents and their families throughout southwestern Pennsylvania are much safer today than they were before we began. And this will actually be it will be detrimental to the industry's plan for expansion. With further support of our work though, we definitely believe we can take important elements of the municipal ordinance project, expand that work into the Ohio River Valley, and organize to take land off the table slated for petrochemical hub facilities themselves. I hope that you will join us on this journey and the work that we're doing. For Pennsylvania, I think it's important for you to understand that parents like myself are fighting every day to take this state in a new and better direction, so that our biggest concern is once again getting our kids to sporting events and which college they may choose. We don't want that worry to have to be whether they will live to see graduation. So thank you again for being here. And with that said, I will turn this over to my colleague, Alex Nagy, our California director.
Thanks so much, Megan. And just thank you so much for sharing your story with all of us. It's not right what's happening to you and the countless families and children in PA. And I'm just so honored to be alongside you in this fight, just on a completely different coast. So yeah, my name is Alex Nagy. I'm the California Director with Food and Water Action in California, based in Los Angeles, currently on Tongva territory. And just wanted to share a little bit how California fits into all of this. You may hear that California is really a climate leader in the country, and I really want to expose kind of the dirty underbelly of the fossil fuel industry here. So despite its green image, California is only second to Texas as an emitter of climate polluting greenhouse gases. In 2019, the state had issued 2,383 new drilling permits. Our latest report, called California Leads: How to Break Fossil Fuel Dependence in the Golden State, details the web of fossil fuel infrastructure, which includes 298 fracked gas power plants, 100,000 miles of fracked gas and oil pipelines, 80,000 oil wells in the Monterey Shale, as well as the alarming proposed expansion of fossil fuel buildout in California, trying to suck us further into this plastics industry. Driven by energy deregulation, California has overbuilt fracked gas power plants. Even though energy use has declined, over the last decade, and the price of renewable energy is dropping. California is the 7th largest producer of crude oil, as well as in 2018, it had the 3rd most oil refining capacity of any state. And most of this toxic infrastructure is located in the most vulnerable, specifically low income and communities of color, near homes, schools, and parks. And this is really a history and legacy of environmental racism in California, and it must be addressed. And so taking a step back, I really want to explain the underlying racism of the fossil fuel production in California. So more than 350,000 children attend school within 1 mile of an active oil and gas drilling site, and 80% of these children are not white. More than 5.4 million Californians, that's 14% of our population, live within 1 mile of an oil and gas well. And of that group, 69% or 3.7 million residents are people of color. And so this just really highlights how the continued advancement of fossil fuel infrastructure in California is in fact a racist policy. It disproportionately impacts people of color. So the closer people live to fossil fuels, the higher it is their potential to be exposed to hazardous pollutants that we've heard so much about, such as the increased risk of respiratory, neurological problems, birth defects, and cancer. And right now, these problems are being borne by mostly, again, people of color in California who already lack sufficient access to clean air, healthcare, and housing security. California also routinely allows oil companies to inject toxic wastewater into the ground, often directly into protected aquifers, all in violation of the Safe Drinking Water Act. And some counties even allow oil companies to use oil wastewater to irrigate crops. So this is all shocking and all horrible. And while we were in transition for a new governor, Governor Gavin Newsom, while running for office, he promised to move California away from polluting fossil fuels to renewable energy. He specifically pledged to close down the Aliso Canyon gas storage facility, the site of the worst gas blowout in US history, and oppose fracking and other unsafe oil operations. And Governor Newsom has yet to take action on these promises since taking office at the beginning of 2019. Instead, he's facilitated the opposite. During this pandemic, we've seen Governor Newsom greenlight more fracking in Latinx communities in Kern County and expand the use of Aliso Canyon gas storage facilities, showing he's willing to put fossil fuel interests above public health or addressing environmental racism. Our work shows that the governor has the authority to order regulators to take many of the actions he promised on the campaign trail. The authority, which would be strengthened by declaring a climate or health emergency, which he has done in the last few months, essentially shutting down the state. Why not shut down the fossil fuel industry? As we all know, all of this work is interconnected. So that's why we're calling on Governor Newsom specifically to use his authority to do the following. Immediately stop issuing new fossil fuel permits and develop a plan to phase out fossil fuel production, ban fracking, which represents 20% of the oil drilling in California for some of the dirtiest crude in the country, permanently close Aliso Canyon, and develop a fair and just transition to 100% real clean energy by 2030. So these are the steps that he can take immediately without legislative or regulatory approval. But given his track record so far, we know we need to continue building power and win against the fossil fuel industry at the local level. The change we need will have to come from the people, and communities across the state are stepping up to the challenge. 2 recent local victories against new oil development in California prove that progress towards clean energy future can be made with or without Newsom. And in the last month alone, our victories include in Culver City, the city council just released a report showing that oil drilling can be legally phased out in the city. And this development comes after communities rose up against the expansion of the Inglewood oil field, the largest urban oil field in the country. And this report is a huge relief after 8 years of campaigning. And the next step is to put that full ban and phase out of drilling in place. And then in Santa Barbara County, after fighting for 3 years, Era Energy, co-owned by Shell and Exxon, recently withdrew its application to drill more than 200 new wells in Cat Canyon, Santa Barbara County. Era is the second of 3 companies to withdraw drilling applications for this canyon in the last 2 months. So before Newsom took office, we were very busy securing and organizing fracking bans in counties up and down the state. and in cities. And we're continuing to be excited and committed to ban fracking in California and end fossil fuels, making California live up to its potential to be a green leader in the country and in the world. It all starts at the local level, and we're committed to leveraging this local power and community wins to break free from our dependence of fossil fuels in California. So I thank you so much for your time, and I will pass the mic along to Eric Weltman, senior organizer with us in New York, to talk about the Fracking Ban Act. Eric.
Hi, folks. My name is Eric Weltman, and I am a Brooklyn-based senior organizer with Food and Water Action. My role this evening is twofold. First, to help you sign up for the best way to stay connected with our work, text messages. Second, to explain the Fracking Ban Act and discuss how you can support this important bill. I want to call your attention to the chat on your screen, where we'll be posting some interesting and important links. I also want to explain something about the situation in the Empire State. We banned fracking 5 years ago after a long grassroots campaign, yet fracking still remains a big problem for us. Why is that? At least 4 reasons. First, fracking infrastructure. We're contending with an onslaught of proposed pipelines and power plants that transport and burn fracked gas. Second, fracking waste. New York is a dumping ground for toxic radioactive waste from fracking done across the border in Pennsylvania. Third, climate change. My own neighborhood in Brooklyn was hard hit by Superstorm Sandy, and it doesn't matter where the fracking is done. If it continues, we're underwater. Fourth, and finally, as highlighted in the movie, fracking is driving the production of plastics that we're drowning in. The bottom line is this: we all have a stake in banning fracking everywhere now. Okay, so my first task this evening, as I mentioned, is to help you sign up for the best way to stay connected with our work, text messages. So first, I need everyone to please take out your cell phones. Text messages are a really incredibly valuable way to stay connected and involved. We send messages sparingly, but when we do, it's because there's something important that we need you to take action on. A call to make, a rally to attend, a petition to sign. So here's how you sign up. Take out your cell phone and type in the message or the word plastic, just one word, plastic, to 69866. I think we're putting that in the chat. So it's again, plastic to the 5 numbers, 69866. Plastic to 69866. It's that simple, so please, please do it. All right, the Fracking Ban Act. The first thing you might want to know is the bill was introduced by 2 people you've heard of, Bernie Sanders in the Senate and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, otherwise known as AOC, in the House of Representatives. As you can imagine, this bill is bold and ambitious, and it does what the science says we need to do, helps us move off fossil fuels. So I'm going to summarize the bill's provisions, but if you're interested in reading the bill itself, it's actually not very long. You can view it in the chat. And you can click on the links on the congress.gov website and see the list of all the 16 co-sponsors that we already have in the House of Representatives. So the bill does 4 things. First, it prohibits the federal government from issuing permits for any new fracking infrastructure, including pipelines, power plants, export terminals, you name it. Second, it revokes permits for current fracking wells within 2,500 feet of homes, schools, or other inhabited structures. Third, it establishes a just transition committee to develop recommendations to ensure the health and prosperity of oil and gas producing regions. And fourth, it bans fracking nationwide on January 1st, 2025. This bill is so awesome. It's been endorsed by over 570 organizations, including the Progressive Democrats of America, the Sunrise Movement, the Sierra Club, and the Indigenous Environmental Network. But at the end of the day, what we really need is more support in Congress, which means more co-sponsors, particularly in the House of Representatives. We need your help in spreading the word, recruiting others to get involved, and putting pressure on members of Congress to support this important bill. Now, there are at least two ways that you can take action. First, sign and share our online petition. And the commitment that we're asking you to make, this is really important, is to sign the petition yourself and recruit at least 5 friends. Hey, let's make it 10. How about it? Let's make it 10. Recruit at least 10 friends to also do so as well. So sign the petition and recruit at least 10 of your friends to do it as well. Second, make a call using this phone number, 877-292-7305. Again, that's 877-292-7305. This number, through the magic of technology, will connect you to your own member of Congress. And if you're extra committed, which we hope you are, there are other ways to take action, like writing a letter to the editor, to your local newspaper, and trying to arrange a meeting with your member of Congress. And if you'd like to get more involved, please send an email to ACT, A-C-T, ACT at FWWatch, or FW Action, ACT at FWAction.org. Thank you. And as we like to say, ban fracking now. Ban fracking now. Thank you.
Woo.
Okay, thanks, Eric. No, that was inspirational, and absolutely, we need to ban fracking now. And we're ready for your questions. It's time to hear from you. So if you go to the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, you'd be able to enter your questions there, and we'll direct those to our panelists. We'll answer as many questions as we can. We've got a lot of questions coming in already, so we'll do our very best to answer each and every one of your questions tonight. While you're typing your questions, I'd like to remind you that you can donate today by clicking on the donation link in your screen. If you click there, you can become a monthly donor or a one-time donor, your preference, and you'll be able to support all of the work you just heard about from my colleagues. So we have a few questions coming in already, so we're gonna get going with those. Okay, so the first question came in is for Megan. Megan, what does the industry have planned for the Appalachian Petrochemical Hub?
Great question. So when we talk about the petrochemical hub and the build out of that hub, what all that's going to look like, we're talking about ethane cracker plants. We're talking about, more processing facilities. We're talking about underground storage for ethane storage. And we're also talking about thousands of miles of pipeline to connect these projects. So a lot of what we're seeing for the Ohio River Valley, especially right now, are, some of these rumored proposals for at least 5 additional cracker plants. And cracker plants, if you're not familiar, so cracker is kind of the industry lingo for a plant that takes oil and gas and breaks it into smaller molecules to create ethylene, which is used in plastics manufacturing. This build out is essentially going to be massive, at least what they have planned. In fact, it has been referred to as the new Cancer Alley. And for those that are familiar with the Ohio River Valley, instead of calling us Cancer Alley, they actually have started to call us Cancer Valley.
Thanks, Megan. Next question would be for Emily. It says, is there anything Congress can do other than the Fracking Ban Act to stop the petrochemical facilities?
Yeah, you know, it's amazing when we go and talk to members of Congress, how many of them aren't even aware of the connection between fossil fuel extraction and plastics production. So there's a lot of education that's needed, but there's also another area that we've been able to work with Congress over the past 2 years. There's actually, every year there's an appropriations process where Congress determines what they're going to spend for the government with our taxpayer dollars in a given year. And we actually found out, related to this petrochemical hub, that they were using a clean energy program to provide financial backing to a company that wanted it to build one of the underground ethane storage facilities that Megan talked about, which would be proposed either in Western Pennsylvania, Ohio, or West Virginia. We don't even know exactly where. And so they would have been accessing this $1.9 billion loan guarantee that was intended for clean energy projects. So we actually worked with some members of Congress to get an amendment introduced that was attached to the appropriations bill that prohibited this program from being used to back projects that emitted fossil fuels. It ended up making it through the entire House of Representatives, which was really exciting, and into the kind of compromised appropriations bill in a report. And this was significant because it actually gives us a legal basis to challenge this application when they bring the final application before the program. This was through the Department of Energy. And so we're working now again this year to get language again into this year's appropriations bill. And this is an effective strategy to kind of use the power of Congress through the appropriations process to keep them from funding things that we don't support, such as this major petrochemical hub. So that was a minor victory last year that we hope to continue into the new appropriations process, which is happening now.
Great.
But again, contact your members of Congress and educate them about the connection between these issues and that they need to support the Fracking Ban Act and do even more. So yeah, thank you. Sorry, Joe.
No, not at all. We have a couple of questions related to the fossil fuel industry and corporate, the corporate giving level. First question is, how can we take on the power of the fossil fuel industry? And maybe Eric, maybe you might want to take that one.
Sure. I mean, we've had a tremendous amount of experience doing so in New York, having banned fracking. I mean, the bottom line, I suppose, is it comes down to organizing and building power. I mean, we're never going to match the industry dollar for dollar, though we certainly like to try. But really, it comes down to building power. That means building our own base of activists and allies and supporters, folks like yourself who join the organization, make a contribution, get involved, get active, volunteer. But it also means working with a tremendous base of allies. We do a lot of work with the faith community. They're a tremendous source of strength. We work with some elements of organized labor. The nurses union have been tremendous allies in the fight against fracking. Student groups, other allies within the environmental community, even business groups. I mean, here in New York, when we fought against fracking, farmers and vintners and brewers were tremendous allies. So really, it's just about building power, because obviously we're going up against one of the world's most powerful industries. But we've proven time and time again that with support from folks like you, we can build the power necessary to take on the oil and gas industry and win. And it's not easy, that's for sure, but it's necessary, and we're going to do it. We've done it, and we're going to continue to do it.
Okay, and add on for that, and maybe Emily, you'll take this one. What can Food and Water Action do to help us approach the problem at the corporate level?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, there's a lot of work happening right now to put pressure on corporations to come up with, alternative ways of packaging their products, and that a lot of groups are doing work pushing corporations to change their behaviors. And that's important. And, we support the work. We're in coalitions. We're in a coalition called Break Free from Plastic, which has groups all over the world who are working, including The Story of Stuff as a member of this coalition that produced the film. At Food and Water Watch, we really have to be focused in what we take on in our campaigns, and we really see our value as focusing on the supply side and working to stop the fossil fuel extraction and to stop the proposed infrastructure that's going to support the petrochemical industry, because that's what we have experience doing, and really the specific niche that we think we can play in this larger movement where we need a lot of other organizations working on several different strategies and approaches to taking on this really immense problem that's really essential to be solved. So I don't know if anyone else wants to add anything.
Great, thanks. There are a few questions about the links that we shared. I just wanted to let everybody know before we continue that we will be sending a follow-up email with all of those links. So you'll be getting that tomorrow after tonight's program. So we will be getting those out to you. We did have a question for specific to California, which I'll direct to Alex. In your analysis, why do you think that Governor Newsom has not followed through on campaign promises? Even our progressive Governor Brown was a friend of the fossil fuel industry and fracking. What needs to happen to move Governor Newsom and California politicians to help take the lead on this critical environmental justice problem?
Right, so just to reiterate, Governor Newsom has made big promises, right, to ban fracking, oppose dangerous drilling, shut down Aliso Canyon, the site of the worst gas blowout in US history, and really his record has proven the opposite. He's expanded fracking, he's expanded the use of this dangerous gas storage facility. And the reason is because he's more aligned with fossil fuel interests than the public. And it's very easy to follow the money and see why this is happening. Even though Governor Newsom pledged to stop taking fossil fuel money, when he was campaigning for governor, he was still taking money from gas utilities. He was still taking money for the Democratic Party from the fossil fuel industry. And so what we see in California is that the biggest lobby group by far is the Western States Petroleum Association. And they donate, they spend millions and millions of dollars every year lobbying for their bottom line. So it really is that Governor Newsom is listening to their money more than he is to the people and public health. And what needs to happen to move Newsom? Well, he still, has done some tiny, small good things, and those are being willing to commission a study to phase out fossil fuels in California and specifically address oil drilling. So while he's expanding the fossil fuel industry, he can point to these studies that he's doing, trying to figure out how it's possible. But we know it's very simple. He can immediately stop issuing new permits in California, stop the expansion of the fossil fuel industry, start with shutting down the most dangerous and harmful drilling, especially those closest to homes. And so this is what we're going to continue to put the pressure and the grassroots pressure that I know we're all building in California together from the local level, successfully winning in places where his voters are, where his campaign contributions come from, and ultimately building that people power to move him. It is possible. He does have ambitions to run for president. So for those of you across the country, remember his name, keep an eye on his climate record, and those types of things will really help us hold him accountable into the future.
Great, thanks, Alex. We've got a few questions along the same vein, so I'll kind of consolidate into one question. Does Food and Water Action support banning plastic bottles and bags? Who would like to grab? Eric, you want to take that one? Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah, so I actually have three answers to that question. The first and the shortest answer is yes, absolutely. And Food and Water Action has been, in the trenches, here in New York and other places across the country, fighting, to ban, single-use disposable plastics. So the shortest answer is yes. The second answer, as Emily mentioned, earlier, we have a long involvement in opposing bottled water in particular, and so that's a one of the many issues associated with bottled water is that it's basically, it's plastic. It's plastic and encasing what's oftentimes just tap water. So we have a particular focus, I guess you might say, on bottled water in particular as a concern of ours for a range of reasons. But third, as Emily alluded to earlier, while we do support, influencing, corporate and public behavior, and we do want to, ban the consumer side of things, or, ban plastics on the consumer side, we're really focused more on the production side, blocking the pipeline, blocking the production and of the feedstocks that are necessary to produce single-use plastics. So that's my three-part answer.
Great, thank you, Eric. We're coming up on time. We were going to do one more question here. And if we didn't get to your question tonight, we are going to save the questions and we'll do our best to get back to you and answer those directly. So we do apologize if we didn't answer your question on the air tonight. Last question is relevant to the world we're living in today, and is how has COVID impacted Food and Water Action's work? Has this impacted the demand for single-use and disposable plastics? So maybe Emily, you can take that one.
Sure. I mean, in terms of our work, we are fortunate in that many of us have been able to transition from our office workspaces and worked at home, and we've been able to really adjust to being able to conduct a lot of our really essential work virtually using Zoom and all of the social media and other tools. And so we've actually been able to get quite a lot done despite the changes in the environment. I think COVID's also exposed a lot of the issues with access to affordable water, with our food system and a lot of the meat packing plants. And so a lot of the issues that we've been working on for a long time, like people having access to affordable tap water and a lot of the serious food safety issues with the slaughterhouses and many other things, have really, the crisis has shone a light on these issues that we've been working on for a long time. As it relates to the plastics issue, I think it is a challenge that we're going to have to face as the industry is going to see this as an opportunity to, require the use of more plastic products. And I think, there are essential uses for plastic that we should be focused on instead of a lot of the wasteful single uses like bottled water and plastic bags that Eric's talked about us working against. And so the goal ahead is to figure out how we can, address the COVID crisis and to keep this from kind of taking us a step backwards as it goes to the overuse of plastic, and, ensure that we're coming up with new solutions to dealing with these issues so that we, because we know our climate, it's also kind of made us realize that a lot of the use of fossil fuels that we used to commute to work and other things might not be necessary going forward. And so we are hoping that we can use some of these times to ensure that we're addressing the climate crisis seriously going forward, and using this as an opportunity to rethink maybe the way that we've done things so that we are in a better position to address catastrophic climate change before it's too late. So I don't know if anyone wants to add anything else, but those are my thoughts.
Okay. Well, that concludes our program tonight. Thank you for all your great questions, for joining us tonight. We hope you enjoyed the story of plastic and that you were inspired to take action. And we hope that you'll consider making a donation today by going to the link on your screen or clicking the link in the chat. It's your generosity that makes all the work possible that you just heard about. So please consider becoming a monthly donor tonight by clicking the donation link in the chat or by typing the link on your screen into your browser. Thank you so much to our panelists, Emily Wurth, Megan McDonough, Alex Nagy, and Eric Weltman. If you have any questions that we didn't get to, or if you'd like to get more involved with our campaigns, email help@fwaction.org. Again, that's help@fwaction.org. And thank you for supporting Food and Water Action. Good night, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Good night.
Bye. Thank you.